Good afternoon, everybody. Um, I'm just going to give you a bit of an overview of the journey that we've been on in making all of our packaging easy to recycle and the challenges that we've still got to complete. And then I'm going to talk about some of the future challenges that we need to address as we move beyond 100% recyclable and see what's next for Co-op brand packaging. So first of all, just a little bit about our co-op. We were established in 1844 by the Rochdale pioneers. We're the world's largest consumer-owned cooperative. We have about 5 million members, and that makes us the fifth biggest food retailer with about 2,600 local stores. We're also the #1 funeral services provider in the UK, and we have insurance and legal services businesses. We employ about 70,000 people. Being a member-owned cooperative, our goal is to meet our members' needs and to stand up for the things that they believe in. So in terms of our journey to circular packaging systems, I'm going to talk a little bit about how we got to where we are now. We started on this journey back in 2013 when we started to talk to local authorities about whether the materials we were putting on the market at that time were easy to recycle or not. And they gave us a few different stakeholders that we needed to talk to, such as the Chartered Institute of Waste Management, the Local Authority Recycling Advisory Council, and the Waste and Resources Action Programme. And we set up a workshop with those guys and some of our key suppliers to try and iron out exactly what the problems were with the materials that we were putting out onto the market and how we could make those more recyclable. We then expanded that group to include some of the waste management companies and some of the recyclers. And we then started to hone down exactly what we needed to do. And we started to present those ideas at external conferences and exhibitions such as this one, and starting to engage with other industry bodies like the British Plastics Federation, Coop, etc. And the output of all that work was our tipping point report, which we published in 2016, in which we exposed the scandal that 2/3 of Britain's recyclable plastic packaging is not being recycled. That then brought us on to a series of principles. So what the recyclers told us was that recycling capacity in the UK is restricted to about 30% of all the plastic that's put onto the market, that poor labelling stops plastic from being recycled correctly, that certain polymer types like PVC, polystyrene, and PP film have a low market value, that the poor design of packaging in terms of its multi-layer structures and the types of additives that are put into it makes it problematic for recycling. So CPET, dark coloured plastics, multi-layer materials, sleeves on bottles. And they told us that clear PET, non-black polypropylene, PE film are all commercially viable materials that have got well-established recycling routes. And that really formed the basis of our packaging policy for the time to come. At that time, we also changed the way that we measure recyclability, because up to that point, we had always measured it by weight, in terms of the weight of material that we put onto the market. It's something that all retailers need to do anyway for their packaging waste submissions, and so it's an easy measure to use. And at that time, we were 80% recyclable packaging, but being a convenience retailer, we sell a lot of single-use plastic bottles, we sell a lot of steel cans, and we sell a lot of beers, wines, and spirits, often which are packed in heavier weights packaging, such as the Prosecco bottle that's there. But actually, to our consumers, a bread bag or a crisp bag weighing just a few grams is just as equally important as the Prosecco bottle that they're putting into their recycling bin. And actually more so, because those are the materials that they'd always struggled to recycle at curbside. So we changed the way that we measure recyclability to start to talk about the way our customers see it, which is by number of SKUs that we put onto the market. So we have about 3,600 own brand SKUs, and we measure recyclability as a percentage of those SKUs that are easy to recycle or not. That led to a series of principles which we published in our Future of Food document, which came out a couple of years ago now, which are quite simple really. Our action on plastics goals are: we want all of our packaging to be recyclable, regardless of which material it's made from. We want to put a minimum of 50% recycled content in our rigid plastics. We want to eliminate all non-detectable dark and black coloured plastic. We've now done that. We started to move beyond packaging and talk about products as well. So by 2023, we want to eliminate all plastic products that are not designed to be recycled or reused. We're also working with partners to improve recycling rates. And we have set a plastic reduction target. It's one of the least aggressive plastic reduction targets that you'll see amongst the retailers. But we've always taken the approach that we want to set a target that we know we can achieve and that we have planned out before we commit to it. So our target is a 15% reduction by the end of 2022, using 2018 as the baseline year. We've also joined the Plastics Pact about a year ago, and their targets align for the most part with what we want to do. We have a slightly different approach in that we're not really advocating compostable materials at this time until there is an infrastructure to compost them. And we want to go a little bit further. So we talk about 50% recycled content as opposed to 30%, and we want to go a little bit faster. So we want to get all of our packaging recyclable by the end of next year, compared to the Pact target, which is 2025. In terms of what it means to be possible to recycle, in a nutshell, we want a green swoosh on the back of all our packs. The big chunk of material, about 20% of everything that we sell, that is going to be difficult to achieve according to that measure, is the film. So film, as we all know, is collected by a very small amount of councils. It needs to be marked "Do not recycle." So our approach to that is to start to collect films in store and have them recycled ourselves through a closed loop system. So in terms of how we developed over those 5-6 years now, we started off in 2015 at 46% recyclable by SKU. By 2016, we got up to 69%. The majority of that was through getting the OPRL label on pots, tubs and trays changed, but we started to make some changes on red meat, mince, sliced cut meats. By 2018, we'd removed all the vanity black from our produce. We'd swapped cardboard pizza discs for the expanded polystyrene ones that we used previously. We've taken the black master batches out of cookies, mash, sushi bases, sporks. So our plan for this year was to be at 80%, and we're almost there. We're at about 78% at the moment. We have changed our stance a little bit on CPET, so we now allow detectable CPET, but we have removed all the non-detectable vanity black from all our lines, and we are actively working on replacing the last couple of percent of mixed material rigids that we have. We did start to remove some OPP from some lines, but it soon became apparent that that was going to be a very difficult and costly thing to do. And so by the end of next year, what we want to do is have a recycling route for plastic films at the front of store. In terms of what we've achieved against those goals, these are the numbers, if you like. So we've made 2,800 tons of packaging easy to recycle. We've introduced about 1,800 tons of recycled PET. So all our water bottles, soft drinks, mixers in the 500ml, 750ml, 1 litre and 2 litre format are now 100% rPET. We have removed about 1,750 tons of black plastic and some CPET. And we've removed about 1,500 tons of plastic per se, so about 253 million items of plastic that have either been down-gauged, light-weighted, or removed altogether. These are some of the examples of things that we've done. So we've been removing PVC. All of our cooked meat trays used to be PVC. We've moved those first of all into PET PE and then into monomaterial PET. We've been removing mixed material trays. So the mince pack you can see there, mince was quite a difficult one to do because of the contamination in the seal areas. But we worked with our supplier and with packaging suppliers to find a solution to that. Removing the carbon black, so the sushi example there, that's one where we use clever design. So the tray on the right is actually a clear base, but it looks like a standard tray because we've reverse printed the inside of the cardboard sleeve that goes around the pack. And then we removed all the expanded polystyrene pizza discs from our pizzas. We were the first retailer to do that in 2016, and we replaced those with card. So as I was saying, the big chunk of materials that we still need to do are films, and this is how we're proposing to get over that hurdle. We have a 50-store trial that's live at the moment, where we have been placing these collection bins at the front of store. The 50 stores at the moment are in the south of England, close to the Andover depot. And the trial has been live for about 4 weeks now. So we don't have the results yet. But we're intending to roll that system out to just over 1,500 stores next year if it's successful. So over the next 6 to 8 weeks, we'll be doing some composition analysis of the materials that are being brought back to store by our customers. And we'll be able to see what they're bringing back. Are they the target materials? And have we got an end market to recycle those materials into? So what we're asking people to bring back is any non-food waste contaminated flexible packaging. In customer language, that means clean, scrunchable plastic. So we're asking customers to clean it, scrunch it, and bin it. And the examples there are metallized OPP, crisp bags, snack bags, PE bread bags, mixed material microwave pouches, OPP, biscuit wraps, and the lidding film from PET trays. We're working with the UK recycler on this, who can sort the material into 6 different streams. So it goes into either a clear PE stream, a lightly coloured PE, dark coloured PE, PP, a mixed material, or a residual plastic stream. And there are valorization routes or recycling routes set up for all 6 of those. We're also still promoting the use of compostable carrier bags. So we have these bags now in just under half of our stores. We only sell them in the stores where that are in areas where the councils collect food waste. So that's about 162 councils that are now accepting those materials. So what's next for us once we've completed our journey on recyclability? Well, we need to start thinking about climate change quite seriously. According to David Attenborough, climate change is our greatest threat in thousands of years, and it's a man-made disaster of global scale. We know that many alternatives to plastic, as the previous speaker was saying, do have a higher carbon emission impact than plastic. We have started to benchmark our own label packaging in terms of its carbon footprint. And we're conscious that removing plastic altogether could drive up food waste, which has a much bigger carbon impact than packaging waste. And that's why we need to be careful and take a considered approach when we're talking about material substitution. One of the arguments that's often levelled against moving out of plastic into paper packaging, for example, is its impact on global warming. And if you look at the study that's often quoted, which is the one done by the Ministry of the Environment and Food in Denmark, you can see there actually that the paper alternative to a single-use polyethylene bag has a 43 times greater environmental indicator. But the other thing that comes out of this study that's interesting is that not all plastics have the same environmental footprint. If you were to move out of LDPE for a single-use plastic bag into PET, for example, that would have an 8 times greater carbon impact. PP, 5 times greater. So one point I really want to stress here is that plastic is not one material. We need to think about the polymers that we're using and make sure that we're using them in a way that they have the lowest environmental footprint possible and that they have a responsible disposal route. Co-op for the first time this year have published our total greenhouse gas footprint for all of our food operations. And you can see there that packaging accounts for about 8% of our total greenhouse gas footprint. Food ingredients, on the other hand, and the change of land use through the sourcing of those ingredients accounts for about 71% of our total carbon footprint. So it's really important that we use packaging wisely to reduce and offset as much of that ingredient sourcing carbon as we can. So this is an LCA comparing a PET tray to a paperboard tray. It's really important to think about the different environmental impacts of material substitution. So we shouldn't be rushing headfirst into removing all plastic because there could be unintended consequences. There are a range of factors which affect greenhouse gas impacts and the overall environmental impact of packaging materials. How many servings are there in a pack? How much headspace is in the pack? How much dead space is on the pallet? What is the type of material? How much does it weigh? How far is it being transported? What's the transportation route? Is it air shipped? Is it shipped by sea or by rail or by land? How much recycled content does it have? How much energy and water is used in its manufacture? What's its impact on food waste? And what's its end-of-life disposal route? So you can see there that in the case of PET, whilst the climate change impact is much better for paperboard, its effect on the eutrophication of fresh water, its use of land and the depletion of ozone and primary energy demand used to create it is actually worse. So we just need to be careful that we're checking out those unintended consequences first. On the next slide, you'll see that WRAP recently have done a study where they've looked at the use of a PET tray to pack red meat. This study highlights that globally a third of all food is wasted, and that if food waste was a country, it would be the third biggest emitter of climate change gases after the US and China. Food waste accounts for about 8% of global greenhouse gas emissions and 25% of all water used in agriculture. And that's all in a context where 1 in 9 people in the world don't have enough food to eat. So to use a 25-gram PET tray with a carbon footprint of 75 grams to protect that steak that's got a carbon footprint of 6 kilograms is a fair trade. Thank you for listening. I think we're going to go back to Josh now for some questions.
Rob, thank you very much, and I feel like I'm saying it a lot today, but congratulations, you've made incredible strides in the past few years, and I can only imagine how hard you and the team have worked on it. Let's start with a sort of general one. What in the journey so far has been the biggest challenge for you in all of the different areas where you've made such big progress?
I would say the biggest challenge by far has been the removal of multi-layer rigid plastics and their move to mono materials, especially in vacuum skin packs. That has been quite a challenge, one that we're still to crack, but we are working hard on it. Multi-layer materials containing aluminium, paper and polyethylene has been another one, because some of the companies that pack these materials are using quite antiquated equipment. It needs to be approached quite carefully because of the high sealing temperatures that have been involved in sealing those materials traditionally.
Okay.
Yeah.
And is it your experience that the challenges or the problems to solve are related to the existence of the technology, or is it more to do with sort of availability of the technologies in particular supply chains or suppliers without naming names?
Yeah, it's a bit of both, I think. So when we removed expanded polystyrene from pizzas, for example, that project took over 3 years to complete, to move those into corrugated board, because pizzas are packed in a warm, humid environment where there's a lot of moisture in the air. If you just put a solid board or a plain corrugated tray into that environment, it will just warm up straight away. So in that project, we worked quite hard on developing a series of perforations into the surface of the substrate, which broke the memory. So, sometimes the technology does exist, but it needs a lot of work to get it into a position where you can actually pack it. And sometimes it's about developing new technology. So, replacing those multi-layer materials in protein would be an example of that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm very interested in your next big nut to crack, which is around films. The trials that you are running, obviously, again, it's a bit of a running theme today, but they require, in terms of bringing the packaging back to store, it's requiring a new behaviour from consumers. And how are you making that happen beyond the technical implementation? How is that communicated, and how is that encouraged in terms of that behaviour with the shoppers?
Well, we've tried to use language that's accessible to the consumers, so we've been careful to avoid using terms like flexible laminates, which will just turn the average consumer off. So that's why we've been careful to call it clean, scrunchable plastic. We think that is a accessible term that most people would understand. And then we've also put images of the types of materials that we want people to bring back onto the bin. We've also done a targeted social media campaign to our members who we know are living within a mile of the stores where we've got the bins in place.
Okay.
and we've started to put animations onto our till screens that show. One of them shows somebody scrunching a crisp bag and putting it in the bin, for example. So it's just kind of that subliminal messaging. Every time you go in the co-op and you pay at the self-service till, you're getting that reminder then to bring your material back next time.
Mm. And I appreciate you don't have figures yet, but are people doing it?
Yeah, we've got enough material back to do the composition analysis. The trial is live for another 6 weeks. So at the end of that point, we'll be able to see exactly what people have brought back, and how much of it was recyclable material.
Mm-hmm.
So
Okay.
yeah, but by probably middle of next year, we'll be able to make a decision on whether we roll that out to 1,511 stores, which is what we've got in mind, which is our definition of one store in every community. So that would
Right.
mean that all of our customers are within 10 miles of a collection point.
Okay. Okay. And is the principle with that at the moment, you're collecting the material and you will analyze what you've got at the end of that. Is the recycler who you're working with, you said that they can split out the different materials into the different streams. Are all of those different streams able to be recycled?
Yeah, so the three polyethylene streams will either go into clear sacks, things like bags for life and tinted sacks, or bin bags. Those are the three polyethylene streams. The polypropylene, we're working with the recycler on developing end markets, but our plan is that they will go into rigid PP items, to start with for non-food. So things like buckets, drain pipes, car parts, automotive, returnable crates, that type of stuff. The rigid, all the rigid PT will be stripped out and put back into thermoformable sheet. And the mixed material plastic stream can go into things like garden furniture and construction boards.
Okay. Okay. So there are in theory markets for all of those materials.
Yeah.
Finally, we're about to move on to a debate. Sorry, my phone is ringing. The big carbon debate is coming up next, and you talked, of course, at the end of your presentation about carbon. What would you say are your if you had to choose one or two big learnings from the work that you've done so far on carbon and carbon labeling, what would they be? What would your sort of takeaways be?
I would say that it's not as simple as saying one material is better than another. You need to look at the supply chain and the individual product and how it's manufactured, and you need to make your decision based on granular data rather than industry averages.
Mm-hmm.
And the other learning I would say is that prevention of food waste is paramount. Reducing the climate change impact of food waste is packaging's job. And if we try and save 50 grams of carbon by moving out of plastic into paper, but we increase food waste by 2 kilograms, we're not doing what we're supposed to be doing.
Yeah, yeah, and it's interesting because the food waste debate is not brand new, but it brings it back to the fore, I suppose.
Definitely.
Yeah, yeah. Well, Rob, thank you so much again for sharing your story with us, and you're clearly doing incredible work. There is more to come, I'm sure, and we'll look forward to maybe in a future Discovery Day or a future Packaging Innovations show hearing more from you. So thank you very much for now, and all the best, and we'll catch up soon.
Thank you. See you soon. Bye.